Welcome to this Year 6 SATS webinar. We are fast approaching the time where your children will sit the SATS exams. And so it's a good chance for us to inform you about how the week will run, what we do to make sure every child has the best chance of success, but also to make sure that, the way they feel about the week is appropriate, that they're not feeling anyway under pressure, and that they are in the position just to give it their best go. So we've got two fantastically experienced teachers here who have been there and done it before. And, having been involved in it with them, I know that, they make sure that every child gives it their best and feels comfortable and happy. So I'm going to pass over to them. We will have time for questions at the end. You can either do that by popping your question in the chat or by waiting until the end, at which point we will unmute and have the opportunity to share questions as well. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck. Good afternoon. I was going to say good evening. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Year 6 SATS 2025 sort of information evening, just to make sure that we all know what is happening, how it's happening, how the children have been prepared, how you can further prepare them if you wish, but it's certainly not mandatory, and just to give you an overview of how the week is going to run. So what are the SATS? Do you want to do this one, Ms. Sadie?
Yeah. So SATS are the standardised assessment tests that are given to children at the end of Key Stage 2. They take place over the course of a week, actually 4 days, starting on Monday this year, 12th of May, and ending on the 15th of May, Thursday. They consist of grammar papers, reading papers, and both the grammar is SPAG and spelling. They also consist of maths papers, which is arithmetic and reasoning. Writing is assessed using evidence that we've kind of collected throughout the year, so it's more of a teacher assessment rather than the standardised assessment tests.
So that week is exceptionally important for your children to be in school. So please do earmark those dates, whether it's on the calendar on the fridge or on your phone, in your diary. The children need to be in school on time. And each test is set on a specific date. So every child in the country will be sitting SPAG on the Monday. They will be sitting reading on the Tuesday. And there's no movement on that. So when and how are the SATs completed? So the children take the tests in the normal school hours under exam conditions, and we use the Year 6 block and some other locations around the school which are quiet and have minimal traffic in terms of the other children. Children are not allowed to talk to each other. As soon as the tests enter the room, which are delivered by Mr. Tuck and Mr. Woods, the children are not to talk, and they're not to talk until those tests are then collected by Mr. Tuck and Mr. Woods. The tests are then collected by a courier, and they are sent away to be marked by external markers. And then the results come back to school in July, and you will receive those in your child's end of year report on a piece of A4 paper, and it will either say whether they are expected, greater depth, or working towards. So specific arrangements for SAT. So there are some children with additional needs, and we have a set of eligibility questions set out by the Standards and Testing Agency, which determines whether specific children that us as a school identify get that extra time. So it's extra time is the one that we have to apply for. However, there is an abundance of other access arrangements that we are more than sort of granted permission to put into place to make sure that it doesn't give any child an easier way of scoring. I can't think of a posh way to say that, but you get my gist. But it makes sure that they are at the same level as everybody else, so that everyone is getting an equal opportunity to fulfill their potential. So the additional things that we can put in place are things like rest breaks. We can transcribe. So for children that have, tricky handwriting, if you don't know their writing, you wouldn't necessarily be able to decipher it. We can use transcribes, which is where an adult would keep them back after the test and just ask them to read some of their answers, where we could write it above. Some children in the past have used word processors, but we will speak to you if your child is going to be given any extra access arrangements. And if on the day they have a wobble or they need a minute, a rest break is more than, it will be accessed by everyone and anyone if they need it. Children with an EHCP do automatically get given 25% additional time, except for the spelling paper, because that's actually, it's not actually timed. So that can go on for as long as needed. And for children that have modified large print or braille, which this year we don't have any of, but we have had in the time, get 100% extra time. So just to reiterate, because that was a lot of information in one go, if your child is given any specific access arrangement due to an identified need, we will reach out and speak to you about that, all in good time. So the organisation, the way that we're going to organise it, and we've done this a couple of years, is that we're going to do it in waves. So there'll be 2 waves. So everyone will sit the test on the specific day that the government have said we need to sit it, but we will sit it in 2 waves. And this is just to ensure that there is suitable provision for all of the children, that everybody we don't want busy rooms. We want them to be spread out. We want to ensure that we abide by all of the legislation that's been sent out to ensure that we are following the rules. So the first wave will start at 9 a.m. and the children that are in that wave will have had breakfast and they will come through to their location, be sat down, be calm, have a chat, maybe a bit of quizzing or whatever, just a bit of fun games, while wave 2 children are being held somewhere else, doing calming activities with a known member of staff. Then when wave 1 are finished, wave 1 will be accompanied outside. Hopefully, please pray for sunshine. And the wave 2 children will then be escorted through into the classrooms and the other varied locations to then sit their test. It's really important that those 2 sets of children don't meet or come into contact, as obviously one set of children will have sat the test and the other set of children will not have. And we don't want to end up muddying the waters. So we have really clear systems around school in terms of the directions and where they are taken and how they are taken there. So we do invite all children to come and have breakfast on SATS week. And we haven't had a bad week yet where we've had to be inside. We normally do it out in the courtyard, outside the hall, by the library, in the sunshine. There's a selection of breakfast. They do often ask when they find out, do we get a bacon sandwich or a sausage sandwich? Unfortunately, we don't have the resources for that, but we do have a selection of pastries, cereal, fruit, and some fruit juices, which they are more than welcome to come and eat. However, if your child would rather not eat that and they would rather stay at home and have a scrumptious breakfast, then they are still more than welcome to come in and just sit with their friends and enjoy the moment outside, that camaraderie, that we're all going through it together kind of vibe. And it often very much so, everyone chills out and they all sort of understand that the week is the week. It's not going to change our lives, but right now we're going to enjoy breakfast and get our heads in the game. So they'll have the breakfast, then they'll take the test. And then in the afternoon, we do a selection of different things, really, depending on what's coming next the next day. We may do a small amount of revision. We might go outside and do some structured sporting activities. We might just let them chill, which is more, we probably will just let them chill. They'll have been working very hard all morning. Just as an FYI, if your child does already attend Breakfast Club, that is completely fine. Please continue just to follow your normal routine, and the Breakfast Club ladies will bring them over to where the Year 6s are eating their breakfast once the doors open at 8:35. Well, no, because we eat breakfast.
We might try and get them earlier. Yeah. We can go and get them.
We'll communicate that with you. Okay, so the results. Now, these tests are marked externally. So they are brought in with courier via a courier, locked away in a safe. And then once they are completed, we lock them back away in a safe until a courier picks them up. And they are sent off to specially trained teachers that have gone on a big marking course. So the way that it is set out is that there will be a raw score. So this is how many marks the child has scored on the paper. Now, with some particular subjects like maths, there are 3 papers. So the raw score would be those 3 papers marked and the score of each paper added together. Then it gets converted into a scaled score. And that's when we start talking about the magic 100. So 100 as a scaled score means that the child has met the expected standard. The standard that the government set out as where all children come the end of Key Stage 2 should be. And then we have 110, which is normally where you would get greater depth. And anything below 100 would be working towards. The bottom line is the piece of paper that you guys will get in the back of the report will outline what level your child has met. So you won't get a raw score. We as a school will get the raw score. We can question that raw score. We can appeal that raw score if we feel we need to. But as parents, you will receive the judgment on if they have reached the national standard, and that is the expected standard, the magic 100. So, grammar, punctuation and spelling. This is on the Monday. Paper 1 focuses on all 3 elements of grammar, the punctuation and the spelling. The children have done lots and lots of practicing of this. And we have chants and quizzes and songs and you name it to try and make sure they retain that information in their head. I can't say how proud we are of all
Absolutely.
of them. It's a lot of information to remember. And that is just one subject that we teach of the maybe 13 that we go through throughout the week. So, yeah, I'm very proud of all of them. And I know Mrs. Ayling is too.
Absolutely.
So paper 1 is 45 minutes. And then paper 2 is the spelling, which I have already touched on. It should take approximately 15 minutes, but the children do get to pop their hand up. We will reread spellings and they can ask for repeats. So the grammar, punctuation and spelling is on the Monday. It's 45 minutes for the first paper. And then the paper 2, which is the spelling, is untimed, but normally takes around 15 minutes. So grammar, punctuation and spelling focuses on grammatical terms, word classes, noun, adverb, adjective, determiner, subjunctive, mood, functions of sentences, the reason why we write the sentence in a specific way, what function does it have by putting these words in front of those words, what effect does that have? Combining phrases and clauses, verb forms, tenses, we particularly pay a lot of attention to, both progressive and perfect tenses. The use of punctuation, how that has an effect. The importance of a comma, which you can ask them about eating granny. They should be able to tell you. Use of vocabulary and how that also, you know, identifying certain words and looking at the root word and the prefix and the suffix and how that changes the meaning. And obviously looking at standard English and the formality of specific words. So this test requires a huge range of knowledge. It is a shorter test in terms of how they answer the question. It's normally in multiple choice or they write a short sentence. But it is a 45 minutes of absolute clawing at all of that knowledge and trying to put it into a context in the question or in their answer, rather. So here are some examples. So you can see here, just from 3 different questions, they're having to move from looking at part of a phrase in a sentence and telling us what kind of phrase that is, to question 21, moving over to looking at one word, but using it in two varying ways. So using cover as a noun, a person, a place, or a thing, but also using cover as a verb, so a doing or a being word. And then you move to question 38, and they're looking at, you know, a word, which either actually could be used as a subordinating conjunction to start a subordinate clause, or be used as a preposition to give more information on time, place, manner, and position. So actually, you know, they are jumping around heavily through all of those grammatical concepts, which they've been working really hard over the year to understand and embed in their learning. So then you've got paper 2, which is the spelling. And this is where they'll use their sounds right knowledge. So they'll use that clapping or the quiet finger tapping of the syllables and listening to the sounds within the syllables. We've worked really hard on our spelling this year. It's not an easy one. You know, they do get progressively hard as we move from question 1 to 20. And some of them can just be actually quite mean. But they have to have lots of practice. They've been doing sounds right. And they've been learning their spelling rules. So I stay confident for the spelling paper. And here's just an example. So, for example, we would say the word is ordering. The children were ordering the objects from the smallest to the largest. The word is ordering. And we would go through each question really, really slowly, making sure we also pronunciate the words correctly and make sure that everyone can hear. And if they need a repeat, we do so at the end of the test. So the reading paper is on Tuesday, the 13th of May. So that's the second paper. Now, this is the longest of the papers. It's a 60-minute paper and it's out of 50 marks. And again, and I sound like a broken record, we've been doing whole class reading every day religiously since the moment that they stepped into year 6 in September. And this covers a whole wealth of content domains, whether they are focusing on vocabulary and the meanings of specific words, whether they are retrieving, so being the sort of the inspector or the policeman, they're going to look for the answers and lifting it straight out of the text. Whether they're trying to infer, so looking for clues and then from those clues inferring and trying to piece together that evidence to come up with an opinion or an answer. Whether they're having to summarize, so read the text and summarize the main points. We do lots of explaining and explaining why specific words were used and explaining why specific characters might be feeling a certain way. There's not so much predicting in the SATS paper, but it is another skill that we focus on in our whole class reading. And also it's about them making comparisons within a text and saying how things might have changed over time. So again, another real wealth of skills that they have to remember and use accurately in their reading paper. And again, we've looked at fiction, non-fiction, poetry, so a breadth of different genres as well, to make sure that they are au fait with a selection of all different pieces of writing. So yeah, the reading is a hefty paper, but actually is a really, really strong paper across this cohort. So again, here are some examples. So they're reading 3 different texts. So there are 3 different texts over the paper. There's about, let's say, between 10 and 14 questions for each text. So this one here is an example of one called The Parsnips, which was all about a girls' football team. So here it says, Veronica's football team has 2 names. What are the 2 names? Now that sounds relatively simple, but there will be some stepping stones inside that paper, which will, unfortunately, again, which I feel a little mean, but we have made sure they can identify them. Sometimes they're there to trick them. Sometimes they're there to sort of trip them over, but they have learned all of the top tips that we can that we can upload to them, and they've been doing really, really, really well. So we're very, very proud of their reading. And here's some more. So a sort of a longer example of an answer. So look at page 9. So it kind of does tell them where to look. Vladik is always changing his Australian performance. Oh, this was about the circus. Give 2 ways that these changes to his performance happen. So then they had to find in the text a little bit more of a retrieval, find in the text, how do the changes in his performances happen? And you can see from the mark scheme that actually there's really specific answers that they're looking for. It's not it's not a massively subjective thing. They are looking for specific words. They need to have sight of specific information for them to get the answer. So again, there's been a lot of test technique involved in this as well. And here an even longer example. So these are our 3-mark questions. And we sort of say in year 6, are we scared of a 3-mark question? No, we are not. They're almost the easiest ones to get the marks for, because the more you write, obviously on point, the more you write, the more likely you are to get some marks. So we've been really heavily practicing 3-mark questions because they look scary. You're expected to write a lot down, but actually when you pull them apart, they're not too tricky and everyone can have a go at them. So since the reading tests began, or since the current testing formation of the SATS began in 2016, there's been a tendency for 3 types of questions to be the most popular. So 10% of those marks are normally gained from explaining and the meaning of words and context, which is why our opening worlds curriculum with our humanities has been absolutely integral to up-leveling all of the children's vocabulary repertoire, because they do need to know what a vast amount of different words mean. 38% have been used for retrieving, so that's finding the answer in the text and copying it down. And then 44% of them with inferences, so where you are trying to be the inspector, you're going around, you're finding the clues, and then you're putting those clues together to come up with your own answer. So it just gives you a little bit of an analysis to see what are those 3 main skills: vocabulary, retrieval, and inference.
Okay, then. Then we move on to the maths assessment test. So we have 3 papers. Paper 1 and paper 2 are both done on the Wednesday. So it's arithmetic for paper 1 and reasoning for paper 2. The arithmetic is 30 minutes and the reasoning papers are 40 minutes. Paper 3, which is the reasoning, is done on Thursday. So there's only 1 paper, maths paper, on the Thursday to finish us off for the week. So in the arithmetic paper, this arithmetic paper has a total of 40 marks, and obviously they've got 30 minutes to answer that paper. The test covers the 4 operations, so addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, including the order of operations, which is BODMAS or BIDMAS, percentages of amounts, calculating with decimals, fractions. And I must say that the children have done this from day one in September, and they have done it every morning religiously. So they are well equipped, well prepared, and if I'm honest, have absolutely smashed it in both classes.
Yeah.
So we have no worry. They should have no worry. They should be absolutely fine. And we've practiced these papers every single week. So like I say, preparation has been key.
Most are scoring between 35 and 40 out of 40 now. So we're in a really, really strong position with our arithmetic.
Yeah. Here you can just see some examples of how people might have set them out. So obviously you've got the box for working out and you've got the answer box to put your answer in. So the working out is absolutely crucial, but the answer box is even more crucial. So make sure you pop the answer into the answer box. The children, like I say, have been prepared and are well ready for this test. When we move on to paper 2 and 3, like I said before, paper 2 will be on the Wednesday after the arithmetic and paper 3 will take place on the Thursday. These tests each have a total of 35 marks and they are for 40 minutes each. Now, these papers test on every single concept that the children have learned from year 3, so inclusive of all the concepts year 3, 4, 5 and 6, and it's an end of key stage 2 maths test. It will test on things like number and place value, geometry, it will test on measurement, statistics, so for example line graphs, bar graphs, pictograms, data especially, even algebra, which obviously we've touched on in year 6, we've learned that already with ratio, proportion, and most heavily is fractions, decimals and percentages, looking at how they kind of compare with each other, ordering them, thinking about them in a variety of different ways.
And this year as well, we started something called the values round. We started it last year and we've perfected it this year. And I think it's had a massive impact on children knowing those core facts. So, there's 100 centimetres in a metre, there's 10 millimetres in a centimetre, all of those kind of things that they need to just know. And how do we have to keep going over and over and over it? Mm-hmm. So far in this webinar, not only have they had to know all of the grammar concepts
and the reading,
plus the reading skills, we're now moving into the domain of understanding all of the underlying maths facts that as adults, we just tend to know. How many days are in March? How many days in a year? How many days in February when it's a leap year? How many weeks in a year? All of these kind of things they need to know. So we've done it a lot this year through quizzing, whiteboards, incentives and games, haven't we? Yeah.
These are just some examples of what you might see on the reasoning paper. So as you can see, it's not necessarily just numbers. That's more so the arithmetic paper. The reasoning does have a mixture of the words, which is what we try to get the children to understand. There is an arithmetic question in there. You've just got to find it and pull it out. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Emma has a 5-litre bag of compost. She uses 2.75 litres. How much compost does she have left? So we do a lot of work on what does the word left make you think of, i.e. subtraction. So then they would work out. And again, any working out can be done around the paper, just not on the barcode or on the edges, which we've already spoken to the children about, and just popping their answer into that answer box.
And working out is really important, both in the arithmetic and in the reasoning papers, because you get marks for your method. So even if the child might accidentally make a mistake in the answer or in the end answer, if you have sight of specific numbers and methods, they can get marks. So if you've got a 3-mark question and they've gone through the steps, that whoever's marking it can see they understand what they've needed to do. They've got sight of specific numbers. They understand what to do with the information. But last hurdle, they added it up wrong and put the wrong answer in, they can still get working out marks. So I think we say it till we're blue in the face about working out, don't we?
Showing you working out.
Please also reiterate that at home. Working out is very, very important.
I think that was kind of this one.
More examples.
Yeah, 2-mark questions, 1-mark question. Also the explaining questions. It's not just enough to say, because I know. As much as we know they know, they just need to show us what's in their head. So making sure that they're thinking about their reasoning, their justification, their actual sentences, and explaining it to somebody. We always try to say, explain it to a robot. Somebody that doesn't know maths. How do you know it's in your head? Explain what's in your head. And again, they've practiced, they're prepared. We're very, very hopeful and we're very, very proud. So
I could write a book with how many explain questions I've seen that are very, very funny answers in my
very
8
comical,
years. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also very correct, but just not enough of the answer. So supporting your child in preparing for SATs. First of all, just give them a big cuddle, tell them that they'll be amazing, and don't worry, because they are going to be amazing. We are so pleased with every single child. And a positive attitude really does go a long way. Just give them as much encouragement as you can, which we kind of don't really need to tell you that, you will do anyway. One thing that we would say is don't use past papers, just because we kind of use them in school to prepare the children. So either they would have already done them, or they will be doing them soon. Talk to your child's class teacher if you have any concerns. We're here to help in any which way, for your child, for you, anybody. Encourage the child to speak to us if they need to, which I think they probably would anyway. Give your child a quiet space for any time they're completing their homework, just making sure that you're there to support if need be, giving them a quiet space to recap, reconsolidate, prepare. Give them time to go outside, have a little bit of fresh air. Sometimes just sticking inside, kind of focusing on the papers or the work, can actually be quite overwhelming. So sometimes just a bit of fresh air, a little bit of a play down the park, and just as much as that as you can would be amazing. We did also send out on the 21st of March, we sent out an email, and this was just for some of the parents that had been so very kind to ask over Parents' Evening how they might support at home. This is by no means mandatory. You do not have to do this, but if you would like to support them in any which way, we've just sent out an email with some links that you can use. So the first link, which is MathsBot, it just generates some arithmetic tests that the children might enjoy to do at home over the Easter, just to kind of keep up with that learning. The other link is a kind of like a SPAG quiz paper. So
games,
for every kind of question, there's some games that they can do linked to the concept in the SPAG. But please don't feel that this is mandatory. Support them if and when you wish. But more importantly, just preparing them to be ready for the papers.
Because from 8:35 until 3:15,
they do not stop.
They don't
Actually, they stop for lunch.
Yeah, they have the hour.
Only. And one break.
Yeah.
And these are some of the examples
just
of what we've sent in the email. They are an attachment. So these are the reading questions. Mr. Tuck, if you go to the next one for me, please. These are the spellings. So it will be tested on years 3 and 4 spelling sometimes. And also, next slide, please, Mr. Tuck, year 5 and 6 spellings. So they're just some examples of what we sent in the attachments on the email.
So things to remember about SATs. SATs focus on what children know about maths and English, okay? They will not reflect how talented they are at science or dance or football or sports or pottery or singing. And we need to make sure we remember that. It is just an hour of their life, okay? And they don't tell the whole story, okay? Mm-hmm. Because if they did or did not meet a certain standard, but not necessarily by what margin. So we never know how far off or how close they were. The thresholds change every year. They certainly don't make it easy for our 11-year-old children. So meeting the expected standard this year might not be the same as meeting the expected standard last year. And we need to be aware of that. SATs are also only 4 days out of a whole primary school career. And in reality, there's 1 or 2 papers each day that last 30 to 60 minutes. And the rest of the day is used for revision. And quite often at the end on a Friday, they're like, what? It's done? All of that for that? They're kind of slightly underwhelmed, if I'm honest. I think they think it's this big week of stress and horrors. And actually they relatively quite enjoy it.
Even really by the Tuesday morning. They've done it on the Monday. They're kind of ready just to get in, get it done, and then crack on for the rest of the week.
Yeah. So what to do if your child is worried? So SATs often does induce a certain degree of worry. We're aware of that. We certainly do not push SATs in school. A child's mental health and happiness is a teacher's number 1 job, and the learning is secondary to that, because if a child is not happy, they can't learn. So we have never made them out to be anything more than what they are, and that is simply just a measure to see how much progress you have made. And it's something where you just need to try your best. It won't have any implications on your future life, your secondary school career, how your friends, your family view you, how we feel about you. We will always be proud. And that has been a constant message that we have said over and over again. However, children are children, and sometimes they don't quite understand, even if we spell it out as simply as we have. So, the SATs should not affect your child's appetite. It shouldn't affect their sleep or their personality. We don't want them in tears and panic and there to be, unrest at home. And a poem we send home, actually very close to the breaking up, ready for SATs, is a poem for year 6 that don't get stressed, just do your best. Remember, you've been blessed with skills that SATs can't test. And that really, really is important, that they understand that this is just purely a measure, and it's not going to change their lives in any way. And no one will be upset or angry.
Okay, so advice.
I love point number 1.
Would you like to do?
No, go on.
No, you do point number 1.
So, advice for year 6 children: listen to your teachers. And I say this all the time, and I do try and put a bit of fun sort of swing on it. But we have been here before, and every year they come back when they're in year 7. They say, "Oh, you were right." I say, "No way, was I?" So we do try and, you know, really impart our experience and our knowledge to them, and make sure that we deliver it not only in a child-friendly way, but we have done this before. They're in safe hands, and to take our advice and to run with it, because it will be helpful in the long run.
Other things, obviously, we want the best for you guys. Absolutely. You guys have been amazing all year, and we want the best for you until the end. We want you to get plenty of sleep, no staying up till midnight, get lots of sleep, eat well, help your brain, read the questions carefully. And we do try to say read the question maybe at least twice, just to make sure you've read it and you understand exactly what it's asking you. Don't panic. Like, if you don't understand it, it's not a problem. You can leave it. You can come back to it. You can always put up your hand. You can ask us to read the question to you, bar from the reading paper. And that's the most important thing. Just don't panic. Remember, I can't read that last point because of that one. Remember that the year 6 SATs only last for 4 days, not your whole life. So just stay focused and you will be great.
So any questions? Now, I am aware, obviously, with Zoom, we are on a time limit. So we do only have just over 5 minutes left to get any questions answered. But me and Mrs. Ayling are always at our doors at the end of the phone. You can send emails to info. But if there's any general questions that don't specifically link to your child, please feel free to unmute yourself now, and we'll do our best to answer them. If not, we'll go away, find the information, and then answer them.
Hi, it's
Hello.
I have a question. What happens in the hopefully unlikely scenario that a child is sick that week or that day?
So if the child is sick, obviously they're not going to be at their best to sit something that they've worked so hard towards for such a long time. So we will ring the parents. You will come and collect, let's say, Amelia. And then we will ask you to have the highest of, so from that sort of integrity point of view, that you don't let Amelia communicate with any of her cohort until she is feeling well again, so that then she can sit the test, and there's no question over her being aware of any content that she shouldn't be before she sits it. But we would work very closely with that parent. But no, we're not in the business of making any child sit the test if they're not at their absolute best. I mean, a sniffle here and a sniffle there is fair enough, but if they're really not well enough, we will send them home, and Mr. Tuck will speak to the parent.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think that you guys gave such fantastic information there, guys, that, you know, there are no further questions. So really well done for that presentation. It was brilliant as usual. What I would say is that I would echo the point that we're so proud of the children. They've had the most fantastic year 6. The progress every child has made is really phenomenal. And that end result at the end doesn't tell the whole story, because they might be working towards or expected, but actually they've come such a long way from their starting points that every one of them can be proud of their achievements. We certainly are. If you think of any further questions beyond today, just let us know, either by speaking to the teachers on the door or just drop us an email to the info account, and then we will get back to you with an answer. So have a lovely evening. Thank you all for joining, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, bye.
Thank you.